Most UFO stories start with, "Are we alone?" And that might be the right question, but at the wrong time. Instead, I want to try a different one. What if they're not from the far ends of space, but right here, just not from right now? What if we made our creation stories? What if we caused the Great Flood? What if we nuke ourselves off the face of the planet? What if aliens and UFOs are not what we think they are? In this episode, we're going to explore a handful of ideas that probably will leave you with more questions than answers. But that's the point of the Terminal Curiosity podcast, after all. I'll show you why the theory to consider is maybe that they're future humans visiting the past. And if they are, how far back are they interfering? Now hang around, because I'm going to lay down a couple of puzzle pieces as we move through to the absolutely weird. Let's start with their bodies. We hear the same pattern over and over. Big heads and eyes, small nose and ears, 5 fingers, they walk like us, apparently breathe our air. Some accounts even claim sexual compatibility. These physical traits are already showing up in us over the last few thousand years. Now, let me paint you a really bizarre picture. Imagine we screw it up badly. Nuclear exchange. The surface, it's a mess for centuries. Agriculture collapses. And the only survivable choice is going underground for a very long time. Some billionaires retreat to their private bunkers, those that could make it in time. Others, high-level government or military, they retreat to their underground bases that are probably closer to being underground cities than anyone would like to admit. The survivors, left on the surface, become savages, monsters even, cannibals, eating anything and anyone they can find. A true horror film. You'd hope you'd die in the blast, but there will be those who don't. Of those of us left on the surface, how long would they last? How many generations of the humans left to live as cockroaches on the surface can keep reproducing before the radiation catches up to them? And if we do find some lineages far and few between do manage to reproduce, and generation by generation maybe even become adapted to the radiated life on the surface, what would they look like after 1,000 years? What would they look like after 10,000? Then what is happening under their feet? What's happening in the bunkers? Are they any more civilized down there? Or did they just become rats? Children who have never seen the sun, except maybe in a story. If the Greys are our descendants, whether that be the surface ferals or the deep earth technocrats, or both, they likely became monsters before they slowly again became civilized and continued to develop technology and become the Greys we hear stories about today. We could only imagine what kind of monsters lay in the past genetics of our future species. If everything fell apart in this future, even by those who maintained order from deep underground, you would become something else as the thousands of years echo on. So even if they are our future kin, are they so far from us that they're not us at all anymore? Maybe they don't know what happened to them, how they came to be. Just look at how hard it is to discern the truth in the world today. Events that happened recently, imagine trying to understand what took place in 10,000 years in the future, in our past. Maybe that's why they've come back, to find where or who they came from. What would their days have looked like? Low light, filtered air, processed soft food, artificial day and night cycles, small living spaces, radiation legacy baked into the gene pool. Run that for 1,000 years. The species left at the end of it, are they still human? Their eyes would be adapted for low light environments. They would spend life under LEDs, not the sun. Their skin and hair would change. Near zero UV means less melanin, paler, almost grey. Their faces and jaws would change. Soft diets shrink the jaw and teeth. Their faces smooth out. If they become telepathic, perhaps their tongues atrophy. Their bodies adapt to space. Calories are likely scarce, importantly needed for operating a larger brain, leading to a smaller, lighter frame. If they have direct brain tech interface, they likely don't manipulate physical machinery or equipment anymore. This would lead even further to muscle mass loss. Climate-controlled air makes big heat exchange organs wasteful. Nose and ears, they shrink. Small groups huddled into tight quarters reward calm and cooperative behaviour. Maybe. You would self-domesticate even harder. It's not sci-fi. It's selection pressure. And here's the kicker. The real damage isn't just on the surface. It's in the gene pool. You start with a small founder population. You carry radiation-induced mutations. Over generations, you get infertility spikes, loss of genetic diversity, a textbook bottleneck. So what do future humans do if they're smart and desperate? They reach back in time. They sample genetic lineages across time because outcrossing with pre-bottleneck ancestors is the cleanest way to restore balance and avoid collapse. That awkward pattern in abduction reports, it might not be random cruelty. It could be species triage. If that's the story, their attitude towards us makes sense too. Sometimes polite and sometimes not. We're precious inventory. Or maybe just cattle, the ancestors who still carry the variability they need. And if your survival depends on your ancestors not vaporizing themselves yet, where do you babysit the hardest? Well, where they're constantly sighted, around the nukes. A big chunk of abduction era reports from the 70s, 80s and 90s focused on the reproductive stuff, supposedly often given with a message of needing to protect diversity. This would kind of make sense as to why these claims have slowed in the later years. If you were coming back in time due to a genetic bottleneck in the future, you'd want to make the journey worthwhile. So you would want a damn good specimen. Specimens that aren't full of corrupted genetics, microplastics, birth control, processed and genetically modified diets, experimental pharmaceuticals, rolled out species-wide. You would want humans from before all these factors came about. So, how far back would they dare go? How far is too far? Maybe as far back as the human species goes. Maybe they were the ones that created us. Maybe we're caught in some twisted web of self-creation. Maybe the idea of the aliens that created us, or even built the megalithic monuments in our history, was us from the future. If it is our future selves coming back from the future to build the past, what exactly have they meddled in? You could go down a real rabbit hole if you start down this path. Did they ignite the stories of religion? Myths that reached across continents. If we develop time travel capabilities and are willing to create these fables, well, you end up with a much different view of the stories of the gods of Earth's religions and those that receive knowledge or direction from them. Prometheus, Lucifer, Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Muhammad, Thoth, Isis, Osiris, Horus, Odin, Thor, Kali, Shiva. The list goes on. What about the events that take place in their teachings? Almost every creation story has a myth of a devastating flood caused by an angry God. What if the God that caused this flood that reset our civilization was actually us? Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson have given a lot of credibility to the Younger Dryas hypothesis. They raised the question that maybe the Earth was bombarded with comets or asteroids from the torrid meteor stream that the Earth passes through twice a year. These impacted the poles, causing massive amounts of ice to melt instantly and create unimaginable walls of water that washed the face of the Earth clean. There is a lot of evidence for this too. Clear scars on the Earth where massive amounts of water running across it would have reshaped the ground beneath it. There are microspheres, which are tiny glass-like beads that formed when a comet or asteroid impacted, melting surface sediment at temperatures of over 2200 degrees Celsius. Nanodiamonds have been found across different continents also, providing evidence of an impact causing a global catastrophe. But let's take a step back and look at this Younger Dryas theory and the flood myth with the possibility of time-traveling humans in mind. What if the God that caused the flood was us? What if we reset the world with a few nukes or some bomb tech that hasn't been developed yet, strategically positioned at our polar caps? That's not something I would assume beyond the capability of such advanced humans from the future. The stories and creation myths tell us it was an angry God. Well, maybe they are right. What about the individuals who have created the very history of our species? Were they guided by beings from our future or gifted technology that seemed as magic? Constantine created the modern idea of Christianity. The angel Gabriel gave revelations to Muhammad that contributed to the foundation of Islam. Moses was given direction from the burning bush. Enoch was taken to heaven, where he speaks of how its walls were of steel and had glowing gems in them. That kind of sounds like a UFO to me. Joan of Arc found a miraculous sword that guided her campaigns. Roland, the 8th century warrior of legend, wielded the indestructible sword Durandal. The legend of King Arthur was gifted Excalibur. There were great leaders such as Alexander the Great, which an oracle named the son of Zeus, and possibly the most notorious of them all, Genghis Khan. Well, he deserves his own episode. Comment down below if that's something you'd like to see. Did we create these individuals in the past to ensure the future? And how does artificial intelligence fit into all this? Well, if we're developing it now, it means they have either successfully integrated with it and achieved alignment, or it was a terrible point in the human timeline. Was the war that sent our species underground not against one another, but against an artificial intelligence? Is that why we seem to be having more sightings lately? Are they coming to warn us that we're elbow deep in creating our very demise? If they are us and they nudged us into being us, then we are the snake eating its own tail. We are the product and the producer, the ancestor and the artifact. we're living inside a closed loop origin story where the future can't exist without the past that curated it, and the past can't complete without the future that returns to seal it. None of this may be true, but it's a mind bender if you're really ready to consider that possibly we discover time travel at some point in our future. And if we do, and we decide to meddle in the past, who said that we're united in this future? Perhaps we're as tribal then as we are now. Maybe politics isn't something we evolve out of. Maybe each side has its own agenda to fulfill or stop. Now, let's really push the idea out to the edges of crazy. Let's open the door to the possibility that the greys aren't their endpoint. It's just one point on the journey of the human species through time. If we look like the greys within the next 10,000 years and have time traveling capabilities, what do we look like in 100,000? What kind of technology do we have by then? Or have we become merely an ethereal being at that point, released from our physical form? The confines of the reality we exist within, mastered and capable of being manipulated or created. Do we eventually become gods? If the UFOs we are seeing today are actually misrepresented time machines from our future, in 100,000 years are we merely traversing dimensions, our ethereal being popping in and out of any realm or timeline we see fit? That kind of sounds like angels and demons. Is it more or less terrifying if there are no actual aliens from anywhere else in the cosmos? What if it's all just us, existing in a simulation alone, creating the future reality in the past as it moves in circles, echoing from the future eons? The people are beginning to press the government for disclosure. Most clearly think they can handle the truth, because most foolishly think they already know it. Growing up like myself, watching YouTube conspiracy videos, they probably think it's likely some species visiting from another planet, watching us from afar, waiting for us to be ready. But what if the truth is something you had never considered? Something cold, lonely, and terrifying. A reality or simulation caught in a loop. Could you handle it? If you made it this far, thanks for hanging out and watching. If you thought it was fun or it got you thinking, please like, subscribe. It really helps out the channel so I can bring you more videos on weird ideas like this. And remember, stay curious and question everything.